In Washington tonight, the U.S. House of Representatives just crossed a major item on its to-do list, passing the annual defense bill.
But as 27 News Washington correspondent Jesse Tenor reports, it hasn't been an easy lift for Republicans or Democrats.
The House will be in order.
Lawmakers landed on a compromise for their annual defense funding bill, a sweeping $895 billion package.
There's a lot of positive things in the National Defense Authorization Act that were negotiated in a bipartisan way.
One of them, a 14.5% pay raise for junior service members and a 4.5% increase for others.
No military family should have to rely on food stamps to feed their children.
But Democrats, including New Mexico Congresswoman Teresa Leger Fernandez, oppose a last-minute ad by House Speaker Mike Johnson. It would block gender-affirming care for children of military families.
I don't know why Republicans keep launching culture wars when the NDAA should focus on preventing wars.
Some Republicans say this provision doesn't have to be in the package, since President-elect Donald Trump plans to ban gender-affirming care across the board anyway. But other GOP members, like Georgia Congressman Austin Scott, support the effort and say Democrats are just using this as an excuse to vote against the overall package.
We're talking about children under the age of 18, and we are saying that we are not going to allow a surgical procedure on them that could lead or result in sterilization.
Democrats, though, celebrated the removal of other controversial GOP measures from the bill, including those related to abortion rights and diversity, equity, and inclusion policies.
And that's a victory.
Working for you in Washington, Jesse Tenor, 27 News.
All right, the Senate is expected to take up the legislation next week, and it would then head to President Joe Biden's desk.
At 6:25, we're following breaking news from Capitol Hill this morning, where President Biden has announced he is commuting the sentences of some 1,500 people and pardoning 39 others convicted of nonviolent crimes.
The president has come under growing pressure to grant more clemencies before he leaves office. He also promises that additional action will be announced in the weeks to come.
The nearly 1,500 people all faced long sentences and were placed on home confinement during the COVID pandemic. Sources say these individuals were deemed to have demonstrated a clear commitment to rehabilitation and reintegrating into their communities. The 39 people being pardoned were convicted of nonviolent crimes.
We'll have more on this story throughout the day, especially when some of those names start getting released of who is being pardoned, and also for you.
Frustration is growing over the unexplained drones flying over New Jersey and Pennsylvania. Law enforcement officials have been making the rounds, briefing local leaders on what they know, which is little.
Very little, and many of those elected officials are leaving those meetings feeling let down. Now some are going as far as to do their own digging around and sharing their own best guesses on what this drone mystery could be.
Action News reporter Catherine Scott has been following the sightings for us and joins us live on the Camden waterfront. Catherine.
Hey guys, yeah, still a lot of questions on this. Local officials are being told this is not a commercial operation, that this is not a U.S. government operation. So the big question is, what is going on here?
What I heard is, we're America and we have no idea what's going on. That's what I heard. And it scares the bejesus out of me.
Frustration from New Jersey's mayors after yesterday's briefing with state police and Homeland Security in Ewing. As drones continue to be spotted flying over our area at night, many are left still searching for answers.
They don't know where they're taking off from. They don't know where they're landing. They know that they're staying up for a very long duration.
State police wanted to emphasize that they're interested in getting to the bottom of it. They want to protect our secure assets.
Drone sightings continue to pour in. This one from Franklinville. Over in Ocean County, sheriff's deputies took their own video.
It was coming in our direction. It spun around, did 180 degrees, went back out the other way, then it kind of looped around and then took off past us.
Many of the sightings included commercial-grade drones, some as large as SUVs, not the kinds used by hobbyists. Yesterday, Congressman Jeff Van Drew made a statement on Capitol Hill saying drones may be an Iranian operation, urging the president to neutralize the drones. The Pentagon says there's no evidence of this.
Our initial assessment here is that these are not drones or activities coming from a foreign entity or adversary.
They say to us, it's nothing to fear, but we have no idea who it is where it comes from, what it's about, and what it can do.
State Senator John Bramnick says a limited state of emergency should be issued, banning all drones until the public gets an explanation.
This is an issue that needs to be dealt with by the Department of Defense. New Jersey doesn't have the resources to follow drones and understand exactly what the drones are doing.
And today, police chiefs around New Jersey will get a briefing from state police. We'll see if they can glean any more information about what is happening. We're live in Camden. Catherine Scott, Channel 6 Action News. Matt.
Okay, Catherine,
Last
thank
week,
you.
we reported on confirmed cases of avian flu in chicken flocks in North Dakota. Now it's taken on a national role as the United States Department of Agriculture is asking raw milk producers to test their product to prevent the spread. In the last 30 days, the USDA says more than 280 cases of avian flu have been confirmed in cattle in at least 2 states. Lindsay Miller spoke with a representative from Bartlett Farms in Bottineau to find out more.
As more cases of avian flu in cattle are reported across the country, to help prevent the spread, dairy farmers are being asked to test their raw milk. Peter Bartlett of Bartlett Farms in Bottineau says the requirement has only been placed on larger dairies that are sending milk off to be pasteurized at this time. He also says consumers should be reminded that the avian flu is primarily a poultry virus and very rarely do humans contract it.
Cows really don't die from it. It's very mild, and people hardly ever get it from, and the only ones that have gotten it are workers that are in contact with livestock.
The Bartletts have 15 dairy cows that are currently producing milk and have been in business since 2009 as a direct consumer farm. He says they take a 3-step safety approach when it comes to raw milk production: the diet and health of the cow, equipment cleanliness, and testing. The Bartlett family is continuing to keep up to date on the virus within the dairy industry.
Now, while human cases of avian flu are uncommon, state health officials that we have spoken with in the past reporting say there is a risk in consuming
Some
raw
former
milk.
Hawaii residents are still waiting to return to their homes in Malibu, California. They were among the 20,000 people evacuated because of the Franklin fire. Firefighters had a lot of success today thanks to improving weather conditions in the area. Brianna Koo, who grew up on Oahu and now lives in Malibu with her husband and 3 kids, scrambled to evacuate their home late Monday night.
My neighbor had texted a picture of our whole hill orange from a distance. Like there was just orange skies, which at that point I knew I needed to pack bags immediately. Our neighborhood, thankfully, is all okay, but the fire damage around it, I mean, everything is black.
Meanwhile, about 3,000 students at Pepperdine University in Malibu sheltered in place right inside the school's library and campus center. That includes freshman Karis Kai, who grew up on Oahu. She told us she spent nearly 9 hours sheltering in place.
We could see the fire coming closer and closer, and there's so many windows that we were standing right next to it, and the fire was about like a 1-minute walk away. I don't have a car, and I didn't have service on my phone. I was on SOS the entire time. So it was really nerve-wracking to figure out what I can do because I couldn't call my parents. Honestly, the biggest thing in my mind was like, what's the next move? Do we have finals still?
Well, the shelter-in-place protocol was lifted at around 8 in the morning on Tuesday, and Karis eventually ended up catching a flight back home to Hawaii. The fire has already burned more than 4,000 acres and is still only about 7% contained.
What should we expect today?
Well, I guess you can expect a lot of anticipation by market participants because there was that big pop-up yesterday at the open for stocks in the U.S. as well as here in Asia. But you know what? That rally on the back of hopes for more stimulus kind of petered out. And that's been the problem since that first batch of stimulus that we got in September. Markets went up and then started coming back down. Look at the Golden Dragon Index overnight. Essentially, the day before, it was up more than 8%. Yesterday, it fell back by more than 4%, the big names falling. Yes, there's some profit taking going on. Yes, the S&P 500 was down. Yes, there's a lot of anticipation towards the inflation data out of the United States. But again, this kind of follows to trend that there's a pop upwards in Chinese stocks, followed by a quick reversal because the sentiment just kind of says, well, where are the details? And we saw as well here in Asia, Hong Kong opened up higher. The CSI 300 in Shanghai opened higher significantly. All the three main Chinese indices opened up high, including this, the 8-share index here in Hong Kong by more than 3% yesterday, only to see Hong Kong close in the red, as you can see on your screen. We're waiting for more details. Yes, the Politburo the day before promised a more proactive fiscal policy. That's encouraging. They talked about forcefully spurring consumption. That is critical at this time of a slowing Chinese economy and the threat, of course, of Trump tariffs come January 20th when he returns to office. They also talked about a moderately loose monetary policy, the first shift of such kind in nearly 14 years. All good sentiment. The tone was set by the Politburo. Now it's up for the China Central Economic Work Conference, which convenes today, runs through tomorrow, most likely, to be behind closed doors. We already had the instructions from the top leadership of the party, led by Xi Jinping and the Politburo. Now we have provincial leaders, we have state-owned enterprise leaders, other government cadres meeting in Beijing behind closed doors to put the details to what will be finalized at the National People's Congress come March. So we're going to have to wait, really, unless they really surprise the market and come out with a communique at the end of the conclave tomorrow, which is not likely but not out of the question. We have to wait till March. Likely, the Chinese leadership is going to put in place pro-growth policies. That's going to be the priority, consumption, given the external situation is so dire. But again, the markets react differently. As Garfield Reynolds earlier this hour talked about, the markets respond differently because the Chinese government is a little bit opaque in their messaging.
Protests over the election results in Mozambique caused South Africa to temporarily halt operations at its border crossing with the Southeast African country. Mozambique is an important hub for exporting coal and chrome. The highway that handles over 1,000 lorries daily en route to Maputo's port was stopped by Mozambican demonstrators. They were enraged at the outcome of the country's elections on the 9th of October. Protesters attacked additional critical infrastructure over the weekend and succeeded in forcing the authorities to shut down 2 power plants. South Africa's Border Management Authority announced Monday that the Lebombo border port of entry has temporarily suspended operations for passenger movements and general cargo processing. Jane Thupana, acting commissioner at South Africa's Border Management Authority, said transporters are urged not to dispatch new vehicles to the port until further notice, quote unquote. While vehicles could enter Mozambique before the current standstill indicates an increase in the number of blockages at the border. According to the Road Freight Association, South Africa is projected to incur a daily cost of 10 million rand or over $560,000 due to the shutdown. As a result of the closure, another important source of foreign currency for Mozambique will be cut off.
Palestinian media says at least 35 people were killed early today in Israeli bombings across Gaza. 15 died when a house sheltering displaced people was bombed west of Nuseirat camp. Another 13 died in a strike that hit people providing aid in the southern city of Rafah, and 7 when a residential building in Gaza City was bombed.
I understand you're quite close tonight to the Knesset, which is the Israeli parliament. And we've had that vote overnight in the United Nations, Australia supporting an unconditional ceasefire, which means there's no requirement for these remaining hostages to be freed or God forbid, their bodies to be available to their families to be able to bury. Again, we talked about the view of the sentiment of ordinary Israelis, but the government officials and those you're meeting with, what's their reaction to our very dramatic moves in the United Nations that's blown apart about 7 decades of bipartisanship?
It's a mixture of dismay and disappointment. They don't understand why our government has deviated from the position they expected them to have. They don't understand what the end goal is. And I think they're putting together that with the explosion in anti-Semitism we're seeing, and seeing that Australia is no longer a friend of Israel. They're questioning that relationship, which I think is terribly sad, because I don't think the Albanese government is representing the wishes of the great many Australians, and the vote in the UN is certainly a hot topic of discussion here, and they feel like it gives a license to the anti-Semites to launch more attacks, to burn down more synagogues or attack more Jewish individuals and their property, because look at this is what our government's position is. Israel is in the wrong. Israel needs to be brought to account. So they see a relationship between those two actions that are occurring in Australia right now.
Smoke rises from the charred tomb of Bashar al-Assad's father Hafez. Rebels torched the mausoleum in the Assad family's hometown of Kardaha in northwestern Syria on Wednesday. Rebel fighters held up their three-starred flag as they stood atop the destroyed monument.
We're at the tomb of Hafez al-Assad. We came and saw it be burnt and destroyed by the people of his village, because he starved them, because they hated him, and because he destroyed us. He displaced them and displaced us.
Hafez al-Assad ruled Syria with an iron fist from 1971 until his death in 2000, when power was handed to his son Bashar. Hafez's regime was marked by severe human rights abuses, including the suppression of political dissent, torture, and extrajudicial killings. The mausoleum also houses the tombs of other Assad family members, including Bashar's brother Bassel, who was due to inherit power before he was killed in a road accident in 1994.
We came here to the graves of Hafez al-Assad, Bassel, and Anissa to take a look at these filthy people, because they oppressed the entire Syrian people.
On Sunday, a lightning offensive by Islamist-led rebels seized key cities in Syria before reaching the capital Damascus. Assad was forced to flee, bringing an end to more than 50 years of his family's rule.
All we could hear from our houses were strikes and explosions, strikes and explosions. So we asked what was going on, and a sailor told us that some people who live in these surrounding buildings filmed the strike on the commercial port and the vessels that belong to Syria.